perfectly into what I wanted to say, because I think it was this morning or yesterday, my wife, my darling wife back here, put up with this whole thing, said, well, she's an accomplished public speaker. She's a wonderful teacher of childbirth and stuff at hospitals all the time. She's always talking in front of groups. She says, you gotta have a joke. And if you don't have a joke, I'll give you one of mine, but I don't think it's a breastfeeding crowd. So I said, okay, I better find a joke. So here it is. And you probably know this joke. It's, how do crazy people get through the forest? On the psychopath. See, that segues perfectly into the crazy person who did this, all right?
Yeah, sometimes jokes don't really need to be told.
Better than my breastfeeding one.
Yeah. Okay. Let's try this.
Oh, there you go. I think that's,
Oh, there's
is
Tom
that the
Beard.
picture?
That's it. That's the
Is it?
picture.
All right.
All right.
Tom Beard.
Yeah, Tom Beard. Tom Beard. First of all, I just want to say I am so honored and pleased that somebody's willing to listen to this nonsense that I went through, because it was a big part of my life, you know? It's a 600-mile journey. And so I didn't do very well in journalism, but I knew enough to at least start with who, what, when, where, why, but I didn't get them in the right order, okay? All right, let's see. Why? That's the first question everybody asks. Why did this crazy man decide to do this? And as Eric says, the original plan was to hike all of Michigan. But how did I get the idea in the first place? Because where I come from, I'm not a hiker. This is I'm not one of you people. I never was. I'm not somebody who's been involved with trails very much, because I just didn't know about it until, you know, relatively recently in my life anyway.
Where'd you come from?
I come from Grand Rapids and was a teacher of deaf and hard of hearing kids for 38 years, and then retired out to Middleville and live on the Paul Henry Trail. And that's one of the whys. That's how come. And that's the why the North Country Scenic Trail. But why do it in the first place? Well, I say I take a little bit of responsibility, and a lot of that's just for being crazy. But the rest of it is I blame it on my librarian at Thornapple Kellogg Library, who offered me this book to read one day a couple years ago, and it's called Wild, which is the movie we just saw. I hope everybody gets a chance to see it if you haven't, because it is fabulous. But that's how I got to this point, to say, well, you know what? Maybe I could do that.
You're 25 years old.
Yeah. She was 25, I'm 65. I don't know. Why don't I give that a shot? But I didn't have quite the same life story that she had, which was, you know, she was really trying to get over a lot. I was more in the position of I need a goal. In much of my life outside of school was, I had a goal, and those goals were usually running related. Short quick bio is, I quit smoking at the age of 39, and the only way I could get through quitting smoking was by walking, and that soon wasn't enough, and I had to start running. So after a while, I was running marathons, you know, just to get over. If I'm sure there are other former smokers in this crowd, and you know how difficult that process was, and that's what led me into this life change from smoker, unhealthy, coughing every morning to running marathons a few years later. Well, that was always a goal I had. I've run 7 marathons, and it's a, you know, you do one a year basically, or one every other year, but it's something to have out there and practice for and spend time getting ready for. Well, when I couldn't run marathons anymore because of my hips and knees and feet and my poor little old arthritic body, I had to come up with something else. And after reading this book, something else hit me. And it was, well, why don't I hike the Pacific Crest Trail? No, that's too far away. Well, everybody does the Appalachian Trail. I knew about that. That's a good idea. I think I'll hike the Appalachian Trail. Wait a minute. I sit in meetings once a month with Larry, and he talks about the North Country Trail, and it dawned on me that I live on the North Country Trail. There are blue blazes that go right past my house. Okay, why don't I hike Michigan? So that's what it came down to. And my original plan was to start in Ohio and end in Wisconsin. Talk to Peggy's sister-in-law's relatives who live in Stevens Point or someplace over there who were going to pick me up. It was all settled. But saner people came to the fore and said, you're not going to be able to do that. You might want to think about just doing a smaller section. So, that's the why. Okay. Then the who. Mostly, it was me. By myself. I tried to convince several other people, some of those people might even be in this room, to go with me. Say, what, don't you want to, because I'd never done anything like this before. When I did my marathons, I always did it with a buddy. There was that connection and reason to kick each other's behind and keep going. And I thought I needed that for this. Ended up, nobody else would go. I decided to go. But one of the real advantages of doing it locally was people could meet me along the way. Actually, the first week, I ended up at home, you know? It takes 8 days to get from the Ohio State border to Middleville, I found out. And so that worked perfectly. And then my daughter met me. My sister and my wife met me. This first picture is, I think, like my first day when I finally realized I can take a picture of myself. That's my first selfie. I'd never done it before. And then there's Chosen Hiker. Met her along the way. But most of the time is just by yourself. And for somebody who's not used to being by themselves, that's one of the other challenges. Can I spend all this time by myself and not drive myself crazy, you know? And it turns out you kind of can if my connections were, I had to call my wife every 7:30 a.m., 7:30 p.m., and let her know I was still alive, basically. But gave me that connection, and then the rest of the time while you're hiking is, what are you going to say to your wife tonight? Or what are you gonna write in your blog tonight? And that's a lot of it. It's that, and then the rest of it was coming up with maddeningly crazy, different ways to do cadence in your head, marching cadences. So I did everything from the ants go marching one by one to I love Peggy, she's the one for me. I must have done that for hundreds of miles.
That's called the earworm.
What's your wife's name?
Peggy.
Oh, that's good.
So that worked. I got that one right. Okay, when did I do it? Some of you may I did it last spring. And I started on May 6th, and May 6th is a significant day. Originally it was supposed to start on May 1st, I just picked a day out of the air, and my wife's best girlfriend said, you know, you might want to think about making it May 6th. Why? Your anniversary is May 5th. Oh, good idea! So that's why it's May 6th, and it took 37 days. You look at these little maps, you know, you've all done this, right? You look at this little map and say, how far can I go today and where can I stop? And it just works out. It's going to take you about 37 days if you want a place to sleep every night. And I ended up finishing on June 11th at the bridge, but as if any of you followed my blog, what was freaky, and the reason that this star flower is there, is because I was proceeding exactly at the same pace as spring was heading north. And it was like, I saw one of these flowers on my first day down in the Ohio State, not quite the first day, but one of the first days, and I saw it again in Wilderness State Park. So it's like, everything was blossoming just as I was getting there, kind of. And it was like I was going the same pace as spring's arrival up north. I've said this, North Country Scenic, where was it? From near Waldron, where the trail comes across from Ohio. Peggy dropped me off out in the cornfield. Follow a dirt road up, and you know, it's a lot of back country roads, that section. I'm sure you are aware of that. And it really gets to be nice trail once you get into, well, once you get to Battle Creek, then there's nice trails through there, and you get through the outdoor center. Yeah, but what's the name of the outdoor area?
Yankee Springs State.
No, huh?
Yankee Springs.
Yeah, but there's one before that.
Kellogg Biological Center.
Kellogg Biological Center, and then there's
And then you get
farm
into,
and
there's something before that.
National
Pratt,
Cemetery.
Ott Preserve, that's what I'm trying to think of. And that was just beautiful, and you know, you get into Yankee Springs and you realize what beautiful area we have and how nicely these trails are taken care of, and how lucky we are to live in this section of this state. But then you get up to the Manistee River area, and the beauty is unsurpassed, but it's the ups and downs that just, because it's all around the river, and it's all, you're going down to where these little feeder streams come in, and then you're going back up another hill, and hills, and okay, how did I do it? I realized I needed to get as light as I could, because I took a 60-mile practice hike for my first time ever in my life to do an overnighter on a hike. And I had an old Kelty heavy pack and a tent and all that stuff, and said, but I started in Howard City, and I was coming back to Middleville, and I made it to Rockford, and my feet were just blisters all over. I walked the last 30 miles kind of like this, in such agony, and I realized I had to lighten that pack somehow. So, you know, I did the no tent, just a hammock and a tarp. I just went with freeze-dried food and as little as I could, and I lost 18 pounds in 37 days. And basically had heated water for coffee every morning and freeze-dried food every night, and everything else was candy and energy bars and Snickers and used my cat food can stove. Are you familiar with cat food can stoves?
No.
Boy, it was the answer, I felt. Not knowing what to do, I looked up on the internet, or I go to YouTube and say, well, first I had to find out how you poop in the woods. I really didn't know how to do that. So did you know you could find that on YouTube? It really can. But here's my cat food stove.
You're afraid that was something else you were pulling out.
How to poop in the woods, no.
they do talk about cat holes, so,
Yeah, that's what, I learned that, yes. I brought my cat hole shovel. I got pretty good at it, but it takes a little practice. This is my stove. It's a cat food can, and they show you how to punch these holes in it, and you put heat, which is denatured alcohol, the stuff you put in to start your car, and you, depending on how how much you put in it, that's how long it'll burn for, because there's no way to shut it off. It just, it's heat for a while. If you do it a little bit, it'll heat a cup of coffee. If you do it a lot, it gets 2 cups for your evening meal. And you let that burn, put that on there, and and put this windshield around it. And that's what I look forward to every morning and every night, was that little bit of hot water and being able to eat or drink with it. Okay?
How much water did you take?
Well, I
Look at that.
took one of these,
Oh, okay.
which is 2 liters, but it's awful heavy. And I went back and forth. Sometimes you needed this much water because you didn't know where you were going to get more water. And where's the next place to get more water? And so I ended up a lot of the time carrying this full of water, which would be the guaranteed source of good water, whenever I could fill it up, and I filled it up at every place from somebody was out washing his car. I said, oh, great! Could I have some of your water? To creeks, and you know, I had my filter and my iodine stuff to put in it to purify it, but I carried this and a regular water bottle that mostly I drank out of the water bottle, but this, the nice thing about this is it comes out, it's always right there, and just a couple sips and it's good to go. And it fits in here. I tried it several ways. It can go in and then poke out through here, but I ended up carrying it here most of the
So it
time,
comes
just
with
on
a
the
pack.
side. It's part of another pack, a Camelback pack, used a day pack, but I used it
But
for,
you could do it again.
yeah, it worked great for me. But an interesting thing happened. I used to leave it out when I was sleeping. I would leave it out hanging on the rope that held up my tarp. Well, after about a week, I looked closely at this nipple thing, and it had teeth marks in it. And I finally realized, by the time I got up to Alba, the teeth marks were almost all the way through, and it was obviously mice were coming out in the middle of the night and chewing on that little plastic. There's a plastic thing that goes over this. That's a bite valve that you bite it and the water kind of squirts in. And so if I had to order through Amazon new bite valves that my buddy delivered from the Alba post office once. That kind of stuff. So.
Moons and possums or bears?
So then, how much time we got, Larry? Because I got pictures to share too.
Keep going.
All right.
The longer you talk, the less time we have for our meeting, and it's okay.
And it's
got-
okay, all right, I hear you.
You got at least another half hour, and
All right, and I'll take you through these.
maybe more than that.
What I did was, I bought this new phone for my hike, one that had long battery power, and it was a Droid Max, because I didn't have a smartphone before that, but I realized I needed one. And it took me about a week to really figure out that, you know what, you can take pictures on that thing, and you can upload them to the
Cloud.
website, this Trail Journals place, and you could have a little picture on your that you could write things about. But I didn't figure it out for about a week and a half until so if you look at my blog, the first week there's just words, no pictures. Then the rest of it is there's a lot of pictures. So I picked out some of these that I don't know are kind of representative, and just talk about the reason this is the first picture I figured out how to take, basically with my new phone. And I took it because my grandson is really into dinosaurs, and that's what I saw here. I saw a dinosaur in that tree. Okay? So I said, oh, I gotta get that for Dylan. He'll like that. So
How dehydrated were you at that?
see, when I'm talking crazy, it enters into all of this stuff. There, see, kind of clean shaven. That's like the first 3 days. That was my outfit. That blue shirt, but I wore a shirt to start most of the days. Blue racer.
Yeah.
Saw about 5 of those, and that's pretty neat. He's just right there. And he just, this one, walked along with, right beside the trail for about 100 yards with me, just at almost my same pace. So I had about 3 pictures of it. These are the kind of places I was sleeping. This is, I believe, Long Lake, but I could be wrong.
Hall Lake.
Huh?
Hall Lake.
Hall Lake? Yeah, maybe that's Hall Lake. Yeah, that's probably what it is. But, so I was strapping a hammock in between these 2 trees. And that's where I was sleeping. About half the time I was out in the state forest, just in the wilderness. The other half I was at campgrounds of some sort, ranging from Tyler Creek Campground to Petoskey State Park, that kind of stuff. That was close enough to the trail that you could get there and without a whole lot of hassle.
Had you done hammock camping before?
Never. I didn't know. No, I didn't know what to do. This is my hammock setup. This is at Hardy Dam. When I finally realized, I had to dry all this stuff out because it rained. But so you can see, I got my shirts hanging up and my food bag, and there's my hammock with a mosquito netting that went over it, and that was a lifesaver because the mosquitoes were the absolute worst part of this trip. Because not only was I going north with the spring, I was going north with the mosquito hatch. And I can't tell you the number of places I got to that said we didn't have any mosquitoes yesterday. And they were just voracious. And a couple of days in my blog I said, this mosquito thing, it's all I can, it's making me so frustrated I can't get past it. I can't look at the good parts of this hike. I can't get past these demon vampires that are trying to kill me. So there are some days where as soon as I got to the campground and got this set up, I climbed in that thing and zipped it up to get away from mosquitoes, just to be able to breathe without having mosquitoes chasing me down. And I would fall asleep sometimes at 5:30 in the afternoon, because there's nothing else to do, you know? And you're exhausted after walking 20 miles. All right, I'll go to sleep, and at least the mosquitoes will leave me alone for a while.
But you had to wake up at 7:30 to call your wife.
That's right.
It was 6:30, honey.
Was
Oh,
it 6:30?
Yeah.
Because you had to go to work at. Yeah, that's right. That's right. This is my one and only Masago rattler I've ever seen in my life. I knew they were the only poisonous snake in Michigan. I've been teaching that to kids for years, but I never saw one. And it happened to be the day that my daughter and her boyfriend came up near White Cloud and came up to Diamond Lake Campground and spent the night, and they were carrying my pack for me, which was, they not only resupplied me, they carried my pack for about 9 miles, and that's like having Sherpa duty. I thought that was great. but the 3 of us saw this snake just lay right absolutely smack in the middle of the trail. No rattles. It's pretty early, but I'm pretty sure it was a Masago rattler. I'm calling it that anyway. And there's my flower. That's the flower I fell in love with. My daughter told me it was the star flower. She knows a lot about wildflowers, and I did. My first wife was a big wildflower person. That was her Mother's Day gift. Was going on a wildflower walk every Mother's Day with her mother, my mother, and her. Since we've abandoned that, but I learned a little bit about wildflowers, and my kids knew it too. So this was a real treat. I would see this all the time along the trail, and it seems so, I don't know, it's so small and precise. That's what I like about it.
So it is called Star?
I think so. It's called a star flower. This then is, this is what gave me great hope for Consumers Energy. I've never really appreciated Consumers Energy because I pay them a lot of money every month for a long time. But the trail goes through Hodenpyle Dam. That's all their property they own. That goes right along the edge of Hodenpyle Dam backwaters, and it's just you can see the day I was there. It was stunningly beautiful. The sun was shining, and no wind. It was just beautiful. And I really had to stop and say, Thanks, consumers. You're doing something right here. Then this is the Manistee River, you know, from some of these high places that are some of the most gorgeous sights in Michigan, I think. You see these, you know, high rollaway or whatever, where you see that big bend in the river and the trail comes right to it. And a lot of them have little benches there. You say, you know what? I'm taking a break. There, this is.
You taking a break?
Yeah, but the story behind this picture is this goes back to the mosquitoes. I was so down and so infuriated with these mosquitoes and feeling my life was such misery that I said to myself, you know, one thing I learned running marathons is if you really want to speed yourself up and feel better, all you really have to do is physically smile, and it makes a lot of difference to me. Just the act of smiling changes everything, and I can run better. I stop feeling all that pain. So I said to myself, you know what? I'm smiling today, if it kills me. and I had a Laugh Fest shirt on too. That's what I said. I'm trying to get past this depressing mosquito life that I was living. Anybody know where this is?
Sleeping Bear-Dunes.
Wilderness?
Wilderness.
Nope, it's not there yet. You're close though. This is Sand Lake near Mansalona. It's near Mansalona. And I've never heard of this lake, but yet the trail goes right past it, and it's just this beautiful lake with a sandy beach all the way around it. It's, I don't know, maybe a 3-acre lake, 5-acre lake. It's not very big, but it's just gorgeous and just what I needed that day. The problem was I got so attracted to this lake, I started walking all the way around the beach and absolutely lost the trail. And I didn't get back. I was cross-country trail, what do you call it? Bushwhacking for about 5 miles before I finally figured out where the trail was. But I was just so lost in the beauty of this lake, I really got lost, period. This, I think, is, this is not High Rollaway, but this is Dead Man's Hill. Are you familiar where Dead Man's Hill is? Up,
Jordan River.
yeah, Jordan River Valley.
Yeah.
And I slept there right at Dead Man's Hill one night, but it was the night after I had stayed at my buddy's cabin near Alba. But the sign up there tells the story of why it's called Dead Man's Hill, and it's a nice story about, not nice because the guy dies, he really did, because it used to be the guys that were lumberjacks in the wintertime. That's how they moved the lumber, is by sleds, and his went down that hill and killed him. But the guy that told the story had the same last name as one of our good friends. In fact, who we spent the night with last night, Wojciechowski. So I gotta send this picture over to them to see. Look at that, it's Wojciechowski. That's it again. And this is my feet. These are what got me through this thing. And because of my terrible time on my practice hike, I was so worried about what was going to happen to my feet that I just obsessed about it. And you can see that duct tape was my solution to the problem. I duct taped almost all of my feet to begin with. I duct taped them, and I used Body Glide, which, if you're familiar with what that is, it's what runners use to prevent chafing. Well, I used it all over my feet. I had these special socks that were blister-proof socks, and finally I just ended up only duct taping my heels, and that would last for a couple days. And I think this was in a shower in Ludington. My wife picked me up. We went to a little motel in Ludington one night.
You're showering before.
Yeah.
Didn't lose any toenails?
Huh?
Didn't lose any toenails?
Didn't lose any toenails, and I really thought I would, but You know, I was told that this is the shoe. Not, you don't get a boot because that's what kills your toenails, and going downhill is what kills your toenails, and so make sure this is big enough at the front. The guy I looked at, this Andrew Skirka kid, who's I don't know, 60,000 miles in the past 10 years, said, if this time of year, get trail running shoes because they're light. If it's just, the physics of it made sense to me. He said, rather than carrying a 1.5 pound boot each step, which is like, I don't know, he gave the number, 60,000 pounds a day that you're lifting with your feet. Take a 9 ounce trail shoe and use that, but these made it. They got about, I'd say about 10 more feet left in them. But I swear by those. That plus I tied them very tight. Probably too tight because my feet were pretty bruised by the time I was done. But that's what prevented my blisters.
So did
This-
you do duct tape every day?
Yeah, well, I would leave the duct tape on at least 2 days until it kind of started to fall off by itself. Or I had to wash my feet, or I wanted to wash my feet. And then I would re-duct tape it. And I carried duct tape on my walking sticks. And
Then you would peel off of it to use, you mean?
uh-huh. When I needed new duct tape, I would
That's interesting.
just take this off, and that's part of my resupply, but I just wrap more duct tape on here rather than carrying a big roll of duct tape, because it was all about how heavy and where you can use all that stuff.
Did a lot of those ideas come out of Andrew's book?
Uh-huh,
Yep, the
Yep.
ultimate hydrate.
yep. A lot of that stuff. He's the one with the cat food can, and the tarp too. He doesn't use a tent, he uses tarps. Okay, so that's my campground at Petoskey State Park when I really knew what I was doing by that point. That's just, after, I don't know, 500 miles, I finally knew what I was doing. In the state parks, I didn't hang a bear bag, but I hung bear bags when I was out in really state forest areas or state game areas. And that was a trip. To hang a bear bag, right? You gotta get this rope up in a tree, and then loop it down, put the bag on, lift it up. You gotta put this little thing through it so it catches. There's a whole science to it, but it's the whole getting this thing over the limb of the tree. That for the first week it took me. I'm telling you, it would take me an hour to get it up. And one day, and this is at Ott Preserve. And if you go down the old trail in Ott Preserve, you will find part of my cord still stuck up in a tree that I couldn't get down. Somehow I got it tied around the tree wrong. But after a while I got used to it, and I was real good at setting up my tarp and getting out of the rain and
Are those
and
extra
keeping dry.
poles, or are those your walking sticks?
These are my walking sticks
Okay.
that doubled as tarp poles.
Gotcha.
Were you concerned about bears down in southern Michigan, or was it raccoons and other stuff, or what?
I wasn't concerned, but I carried bear spray, bear pepper spray,
Okay,
because just to pacify my wife,
well, yeah.
because
I took out insurance on it.
there are. She did. She took out a lot of insurance.
I gotta be able to bury them.
That's exactly what happened.
Just take enough to bury them.
But I wasn't really worried about bears, but everything says if you're out in the woods, hang a bear bag just to be safe, because it's not only bears, it is raccoons are more likely to get your food than anything else,
Yeah,
and
okay.
they'll get in it and make a mess of it if you let them.
Yeah,
And yeah, and that's the last thing I would need.
and up past Cadillac, I guess I would be concerned about bears, but down here I would be surprised.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wasn't
Raccoons here.
but plenty of raccoons.
We had a coon run away with our bird feeder. Took the
The
bird feeder off.
whole bird
Yeah,
feeder.
and went off with it.
I believe it, they are monsters. Okay, so that's Petoskey. This is Petoskey. I said to myself, I am not drinking on this whole trip. I'm just gonna be neat, clean, but here's what happened. I got into Petoskey on I got near Petoskey on a Saturday night. And it dawned on me as I'm hiking that day is, if I could get a ride to the campground, I could sleep in the campground because there was no state land to camp in. I would have had to do it in somebody's backyard or something. So I ended up calling a cab, Petoskey Cab Company. And this guy came out and got me, took me to the campground, then picked me up in the morning, took me back to where he picked me up and let me walk back in. So I stayed at Petoskey State Campground 2 nights. But the cab driver said on the way, if you've never been to Petoskey before, if you've never been to Petoskey Brewery, they have the best beer in the world. So that first night, I said, nope, I'm not going on, because it's like a mile back from the state park. No. But then the second day, as I'm coming back to the state park, because I had a lightened pack because I left all my stuff at the campsite. I'm walking right past this brewery. It's Petoskey Brewery, and he says, if you go in there, you got to try the Horny Monk. It is the best beer in the world. And I could not turn that down. So that's me, a selfie, having my one and only beer that whole trip at the Petoskey Brewing Company, and I sent out texts and messages to everybody. Says, if you ever get a chance to drink